It is a time of unrest in 1920s Europa. The ashes from the First Great War still darken the snow. The capitalistic city-state known as the Factory, which fueled the war with heavily armored mechs, has closed its doors, drawing the attention of several nearby countries. Welcome to Duality Gamecast, the show for people who love to play games. And now your hosts, Matt and William.
Greetings everybody and welcome to another episode of the Duality Gamecast. Today's episode we're going to be reviewing Scythe. Scythe. So anyways, let's get to the table and have Matt show us how it plays.
Scythe is a game for 1 to 5 players. Each player represents a hero of their faction, struggling to make their faction the most powerful in Eastern Europa. During the game, you will explore and take control of new lands, produce supplies and workers to further your goals, develop technologies to grow the strength of your faction, and deploy the terrifying mechs that will impose your military will upon your opponents. As you build, explore, and conquer, you acquire stars on a triumph track for major achievements. When a faction reaches its 6th star, the game ends. Scores are tallied, and the faction with the most money wins. Each player begins the game by randomly choosing a faction mat and a player mat. These combined will give the player a unique approach to playing the game. The 2 mats tell you your starting setup. In our example, we have the Nordic Kingdoms faction mat and the Patriotic player mat. This gives us 4 power, 1 combat card, 2 objective cards, 2 popularity, and $6. We begin the game with our character, in this case Bjorn and his ox Mox, as well as 2 workers. On our mats, we have many items we can build, improve, and deploy. We have mechs that we can deploy to our territories to guard our lands and fight our enemies. We have additional workers we can build to improve our production output. We also have buildings we can construct on the board for additional bonuses. And we have upgrades and recruits to improve our economic efficiency. Our faction mat tells us our unique faction power. In the case of the Nordic Kingdoms, it is that our workers can move across rivers. It also holds our 4 undeployed mechs. When a mech is deployed, it creates a special bonus usable by the faction mechs and its hero. For example, if we build the speed mech, our mech and character movement becomes +1 additional hex per move. Our player mat holds all unbuilt pieces other than mechs, and also upgrades indicated by small cubes. The mat is divided into 4 action columns. Each column has 2 actions, an upper and a lower. Each turn you choose 1 column and take 1 or both of its 2 actions. If you take 2, you must perform the upper action first. Each faction has the same actions, but they are coupled differently and may have different costs. The upper actions are move, bolster, trade, and produce. Move allows you to move your pieces on the board. Bolster improves your military power. Trade allows you to purchase supplies. And produce allows you to produce in territories you control with workers. These actions improve over time with upgrades and often have an alternate effect you may select. The lower actions are upgrade, deploy, build, and enlist. Upgrade moves a cube from your top actions to your lower. This has the effect of improving your top actions and making your lower actions cheaper to use. Deploy builds one of your mechs, deploying it on the map. Build allows you to construct one of your 4 special buildings onto the map. Enlist activates a recruit, which will give you bonuses based on future action selection. It's important to note that you may never select the same action column 2 turns in a row. Let's talk about combat. Combat occurs after a player has resolved a movement action and has a mech or character model in the same hex as an enemy mech or character model. Players will use their combat wheel to secretly allocate from 0 to 7 military power to spend on the combat. They then may add 1 combat card for each model they have in the fight. Note, workers do not count for fighting. Both players reveal their wheel and combat cards, adding the combat card's value to the amount of power they spent on the wheel. The player with the highest number wins and gains a star on the triumph track. The losing player retreats all their units from the hex to their home base. Each player then reduces their power total on the power track. If any of the defending player's workers were present at the combat and are retreated, the attacker loses popularity equal to the number of workers. A few other variables in each game are structure bonus tiles, encounter cards, and objective cards. Structure bonus tiles are different each game and add an extra way to gain money during in-game scoring. In our example, players gain extra money at the end of the game for having buildings next to encounter hexes. Encounter cards are drawn when a player character model finishes its turn in a hex with an encounter token. The cards provide one-time benefits that range from the relatively small with little to no cost to major benefits which require the sacrifice of the vital popularity resource. Objective cards are dealt to each player at the beginning of the game. Each player gets 2, but can complete only 1. The objective cards have special, often difficult requirements that must be met, but you are rewarded with a star for completing them. As the players achieve goals, they add stars to the triumph track. Stars can be awarded for completing all 6 upgrades, deploying all 4 mechs, building all 4 buildings, enlisting all 4 recruits, building all 8 workers, completing a secret objective, winning a combat up to 2 times, reaching 18 on the popularity track, reaching 16 on the power track. As soon as a player reaches 6 stars, the game immediately ends and scores are tallied. After the 6th star has been placed, it's time to score. Players score money in 4 areas and then add that to any money they already had to determine a final score. The scoring areas are stars on the triumph track, hexes controlled, every 2 resources, and the structure bonus tile reward. The amount of money a player receives for each scoring area depends on their position on the popularity track. The track is broken into 3 sections. The higher up a player is on the track, the more money they receive in the scoring. In our current example, the Nordic kingdoms with only 2 popularity would receive $3 for every star they have, $2 for each hex they control, and $1 for every 2 resources they receive. They would add these to any reward from the structure bonus tile and any money they already had to get their final score. The player with the highest score wins.
Okay, so that's how the game works. But Matt, how does it play?
Scythe plays a ton different than what I initially thought the play was going to be like, if that makes any sense. You know, when I heard about it coming and then I followed the Kickstarter, it oozes with this sort of cool alternate history military theme, right? It's sort of post-World War I, but we've sprinkled in mechs and awesome heroes. So in my head, I'm thinking sort of a risk taken to the next level sort of thing. But when you get into this game, it has some very tight Euro mechanics where you're generating resources and using economic engines and trying to improve those economic engines. And then it has area control, and it has this sort of very simple, for lack of a better term, quest system with the heroes that adds a lot of flavor. And the actual military part of it, which would be mainly the mechs that you build and put on the board, is actually, it's almost like last resort. It's like, or your last daring move in the game. You don't really fight much at all, and in some cases, not at all. Some nations, in the games we've played, don't attack once in the whole game. The mechs are really there to guard your people and your things, and sort of check your opponents from getting into any shenanigans, and then maybe at the right time, making that one important strike. It's not the military or, you know, Ameritrashy kind of thing that I had originally kind of envisioned, and I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, because what they did is they turned the mechs really work as like a troop transport in the game, because you can move, if you take the move action, you can move one worker, or you move a mech with any number of workers with them. So it's a good way to get a bunch of people to a new zone that generates a different resource. And they made it so the combat itself requires a lot of resources. There's basically a power pool you build up in the game, and to do it, to do a combat, you move into someone's space. At the end of the turn, you go, okay, we're fighting now. You grab your little dial here, say how many military points you want to spend, power. You take a card and hide it behind here for every basically plastic cool unit you have in the battle. You reveal whoever has a higher number wins. The other people get chased back to their base. They don't lose anything except for potentially resources on that spot. And so what this does is it makes military costly, usually for the attacker. Because to go in, it's like, well, you're not going to attack if you don't want to win, right? Like, there's no reason to attack and lose in this game. There's no benefit.
No.
So if you're going in, you're spending resources to win. Even if you think you have the advantage, you still got to spend enough to know that you beat the other person. There's times where you can look at like, oh, their pool's low and they don't have any cards. Now's my chance to strike. But usually, everyone's kind of in the same general area. And if you have one card, those can range from 2 to 5. So it's an all-in type of a thing. And it takes a lot of turns to build that back up. So I think they made it so military's scary. I guess it'd be kind of like if you're like early 20th century and you had mechs, how costly it is to actually bring them into battle type of a thing. That, you know, diesel fuel ain't cheap in, 1920 something, yeah. So I think that's kind of the feeling you get, and it does. Like, the mechs are big and looming and imposing, but combat is scarce. And I think that's cool because it makes it, like you've said before, it almost gives like a Cold War type feel to it. Like like everyone's kind of standing there staring at each other. You're putting out like workers, because if you attack into a space and displace workers, you lose popularity with the populace. So you can use human shields. You don't want to just attack. Like, just attacking doesn't get you anything. It always has to be for resources, basically, that you're attacking for, or to earn a star, which is how the game itself actually ends.
Right, and you get a slight victory point reward for earning that star. But it also puts the game closer to ending. So again, you have your timing and your strategy of when to do that really matters.
Yes.
And for instance, the last time we played, my one big combat that I actually won was the last thing I did in the game. And that was, something about a turn and a half before. I was like, okay, I think I'm almost ready for this. And that's what it's about. Now, it also can be a little bit about territory control, because at the end of the game, controlling territories is worth points.
Mm-hmm.
And thematically, the game has this great sort of story where there's this ancient, or not necessarily ancient, but this old factory from previous wars that used to turn out, amazing technological terrors. And it's at the center of the board, and all these nations are coming in to take control of that area and take control of that factory. So that factory, when you go there for the first time, you get a special attachment to your board, which is a special power, basically, that only your economy can use. But if you happen to be holding that factory at the end of the game, it's worth 3 territory. It counts as 3 territories, and you count up territories as part of the victory point component at the end of the game. So the mechs can be good for that, but still it has to be real strategic. You just can't do it willy-nilly. Mm-hmm. The willy-nilly for me comes with the heroes. The heroes kind of mimic the mechs in some ways. They get the same, any improvements to the mechs you get that help them with their movement or any of their combat or what have you. The hero model gets as well. But the hero can't carry workers, so it doesn't really have that responsibility. It can carry supplies, which is kind of cool, and sometimes ridiculous on the map because you'll have a hero with 10 resources around it. But what the hero can do is run around the board and go on these explorations, these sort of adventures. There's little tokens on the board, and when you get to one, you draw a card from a deck, and it'll have like 3 very thematic choices to make.
Yeah.
Right? And you read them, and I think usually the first 2 are real positive, and then the third one is you're getting up to no good. And usually it's like the first one is just something you can do to get a bonus. Second one is usually something you pay to get a bonus. And the third one is almost always you lose popularity, which is one of the most important resources in the game, in my opinion, to get a really cool bonus. And so they're a little different than the mechs, and to me, they kind of do the cool run around the board, get up to no good thing that you feel like you should do with the mechs, but really the mechs are too important to your entire nation state.
Right, because the mechs are, you have, like I said, to move units. They can move across rivers. Most people can't. So to all your little workers, your mechs are basically like they're troop transport. The hero, just as threatening, but somehow I don't feel scared of heroes on the board the same way I do about the mechs. It's probably just the aesthetic of it. But the heroes are, they're the ones you go deep with. They're the ones you go out looking for those little tokens to reveal a story and get a cool bonus. And I think it adds a level of flavor to the game that you might not have felt otherwise. Because I think we're technically supposed to be that hero in the game, correct?
Yeah.
So it's us going out, running to people, and it has fun stuff like help a farmer till a field, earn 3 food, trade some stuff with the farmer, get some scrap metal, or kill the farmer and take his mech, lose 2 popularity, gain a mech on the board. And that's a huge swing because there's only 4 mechs for each faction, so getting the extra on the board is huge. Yeah. But popularity is basically kind of like a score multiplier at the end of the game. It's like a resource that doesn't do anything for you while you're playing, but at the end, it gets you the bonus points, which is probably what's going to get you over the top to win.
Right. And the victory points are interesting, too, because it's based on your popularity as sort of not really a multiplier, but how you accrue victory points is based on your popularity. It goes up to, I believe, 16. It's broken into, was it 3 quadrants?
3 sections, yeah.
And each section is so many victory points for doing different things. So the more popularity you have, the better the value of your victory points gets. And then the victory points are territories you control, stars for completed objectives, which you can have up to 6, and every 2 resources, right? And then money, it all becomes money, and the person with the most money wins the game. And there's all kinds of opportunities to lose popularity in the game. And you really have to generate popularity by tending to economic part of your game.
Yeah, because in the game, I know we do a little bit in the gameplay, but basically you're taking one of 4 actions every turn. One of those actions gives you a little bit of popularity, and in reality, that's about the only popularity positive generation you're going to get. There's a possibility in some of those hero cards that it's like, help the people do something, get a point of popularity, but generally it's this one action that at the beginning of the game gives you 1 popularity,
Right.
at the end of the game may give you 2, that is the only thing that actually generates this score multiplier of the game. So when you're playing, it's kind of like the power thing. Same way, there's only 1 action that gives you power in the game. It's a resource you're building up, and anytime you spend it, you're like, oh, I don't know if it's worth it, because that's like almost like a turn's worth of actions just to get 1 or 2 points of popularity.
Right.
So yeah, it just has this cool thing where every action you're doing, it's like you're weighing morality, but because it's a score in the game, they made it something that you can quantify instead of just like I'm lawful good, I'm chaotic evil. They took like abstract concepts and made it a scoring track in the game, and it's kind of interesting. So looking at all these cool boards, all the little punch outs, I just say cool so you probably have an idea, but what do you think of the component quality and art design in this game?
Well, it's off the charts. I don't know where to begin. I'll tell you one funny thing about all the components and the design of this game is when you're teaching a new person or new people, you got it all laid out, right? You're doing a setup, and you're going to tell them how to play, but maybe you're just setting it up. It's the same thing I've seen every time is they're like, whoa, there's a lot going on in this game. And most of that feeling is just because it's an amazing presentation.
Yeah.
The rules are real tight, and once you learn them after the first couple of turns, it's real easy. Your turn should go really smooth. It's just the decisions you're going to make. So the components bring just a ton of flavor to the game. I don't know where to begin. Everything's high quality, heavy card stocks. We have an unboxing video you can check out around here somewhere if you want to look at that. But let's talk about the economy board. So everybody gets an economy board
Randomly.
And they basically represent different economic strategies which are linked up with your nation so that there's all kinds of replayability. It's not going to be the same every time. This is 2 thick pieces of card, it's not in cardstock, like chipboard, basically laminated together, glued together somehow, so that the top board has cutouts, so that all your cubes and little buildings that you're going to build in the future, and little enlistment guys you're going to enlist, fit in here real nice, and as you pull them off or move them from the top to the bottom because you upgraded, nothing's slipping off and you're losing track of, was I on this one or this one? It's a cool, unnecessary but awesome step to take, I think.
Yeah, because it took something like Terra Mystica has that same thing, where it's a board where you're taking pieces off, and that's enhancing what you can do. And with that one, you just set them on there. Yeah, the fact that everything fits in, we've had no confusion or mechanical problems with these at all when we're playing. Where I feel like other games, someone bumps the table or just someone kind of moves some stuff, and you're like, oh, where's that piece at? Like, I think it was here. And then you're like, well, I hope it was, but we'll see.
And then, of course, the miniatures are amazing. Every faction has unique mechs, 4 unique mechs, and their unique hero. And, thematically, they're extremely cool. The Soviets, they're called Rustviets. Their arms of their mechs have, like, sickle scythe deals on them. The Nordic guys have an actual, like, Viking longship with a cannon on top and legs. The Germans' thing looks like a very traditional tank with legs. So they're very thematic. The heroes all have their like pet
beast
companion,
companion,
some kind of giant beast companion,
except for the one that has like an eagle or a hawk.
That's beast companion.
It's just not giant. Is what I'm saying.
Pretty big.
Yeah, it's big.
Anyway, they're really nice sculpts. The resources is another one that blows people's minds when we show them to them for the first time. There's 4 resources in the game. It's like a metal, a wood, a grain, and oil. And they're shaped and colored to look like the resource. So it's going to be really hard to see on camera. But the oil is a barrel of oil. The wood looks like a cut log. The metal looks like an iron bar.
And it's heavy.
And is heavy. The grain is a bag of grain. I mean, I want to order like 4 sets of these, and anytime we play a game with resources, just use those. And then all your normal markers are sort of wooden pieces. And, they're very traditional, but they did some extra little things, like each nation's workers looks a little different.
They're all wearing the hat of their people.
They're all wearing the hat of their people. And it's a nice mechanic, too, in the game for when you're teaching new people, is you can tell them that the powers and the special powers and the combat rules apply to plastic figures and not to wooden figures. So that's a good way to say, like, hey, the mechs and the heroes are the ones that get up to combat and get these special unlocks on your nation board. The wood guys are just workers and buildings. They just go on the board. So off the charts, I think, though, it's got to begin and end with the artwork.
Mm-hmm.
The artwork was kind of, I think, the inspiration for this game. And the artist, it's one artist. He's fantastic. He does these amazing paintings of these alternate world kind of images. And it's just, it looks like a classic painting. It reminds me of, like, paintings I like of, like, the Napoleonic War.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has that feel. But now the farmers are in the field working next to some soldiers, and there's a mech in the background.
Yeah.
So it just takes it that next to them. And they used him on everything. They used him on the nation boards. They used him on the economy boards. They used him in the cards in the game, on the cover of everything. Really, really tight art. But I've labored on long with these components. What else do you have to say about it?
I don't want to ramble on too much because basically you've said a lot, and I agree with almost everything. High quality. There isn't anything that I'm like, I wish they'd improved that. I couldn't find anything. Even the player board, the actual game board, at least I don't know if it's in every version. I'm assuming it is because you have the Kickstarter limited edition one. But the board is like a big board to start with, and then you can flip it over, and that's half of an even bigger version of the board. There's basically a second component you can put together, and you can have a gigantic version of this game to play. It doesn't change the layout. It just gives you more space, and which in some of the games we played would have been useful because you end up with like a mech, 3 little workers, your hero, 5 bushels of grain, and 3 ore, and all of a sudden the hex that's pretty sizable is crammed full of stuff. I mean, it's usually only a couple times during the game that you hit that point because you're usually spending resources, but it's just cool that they even took that to the next level where it's like, oh, you want to make this like a big presentation version of this? Go for it. We have it. For most games, people have to kind of home shop that stuff themselves.
Yeah, I would add, my understanding is the retail version does not normally come with the awesome blinged out resources or the extra wing board, which you would need to make the giant board. But Stonemaier Games sells all that stuff.
So you can still get it.
And I think in the basic version, the big board, the 2/3 of the big board is still printed on the back of the normal board. So all you have to do is buy the wing.
Gotcha.
The game also, the Kickstarter version came with all the cardstock versions of all the money and resources. I wouldn't even talk about the money. All the money and resources. And they're fine, heavy cardstock. I don't think they will impede your enjoyment of the game whatsoever. But if you have the extra bit of money and you want to buy the extra cool components, it does add that little thing. The money is awesome. It's metal coins, different denominations. There's like a 1, 3, 5, 10, and 20, I think.
Yep.
And each one represents 1, 3, 5, 10, 20. Yes. Each one represents one of the nations in the base game.
Mm-hmm.
So you have very different looking art, or what do you call that? Sculpting? Not really sculpting.
Coin impressions?
Coin stamping? Yeah. On each coin, like one has the little diamond cut in the middle, like you would string up your coins, kind of more an Eastern feel. But they're all awesome. So yeah, components off the charts, I would say.
Okay, well then, let's just skip right here to the juicy, important part. how would you rate this game? Now, this is on our 4-point system. Pass, like it, love it, must buy. Which one you got?
It's a must buy. Even if you just get the base game, that's what's so great about this is, yeah, I got the blinged out Kickstarter version, but the game itself is fantastic. Don't even need that stuff. That's just the extra seasoning on it. This is a must buy. It's a really well-made game with some great Euro themes and area control with that terrific alternate history theme. And it just oozes the theme and the art and the components and the adventure cards that you experience in the game and the sort of tension between powers in the game. We said it before, the Cold War tension kind of feel just kind of oozes that. So it's fantastic, and the replayability is also amazing. Each nation has obviously asymmetrical powers, and you're randomly getting one of those, and you're randomly mixing it up with one of very unique economies.
Mm-hmm.
So your experience each game is most likely going to be very different. How about you?
You know what? I think I want to go with a must-buy also on this one, because does it justify your purchase? Because it bridges a little bit of gaps also, is what I've seen. People who maybe aren't as into a slightly longer game, people are like, I don't like to play games that take over an hour. There's enough going on here and it's both light and deep at the same time. It straddles multiple, I think, like play groups. So we haven't played this with anybody that hasn't been like, oh, that game's awesome, I want to play that again. So I feel like it's one of those things that you could have as the game that you own. If you're not someone who has a million games like we purchased, this could be the big like meaty game that you play once a week, and for years you can enjoy it, I think. So that was our kind of quick review of Scythe. Whatever.
You know, I heard it might be Scythe too.
We need a third person for that. We don't have a third person to argue over that. But you guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, watch the tweets, do all that stuff. Bye, guys.